as we continue on, so it might be bigger chunks because he is trying to reemphasize really important truths here. But this morning we're going to go through John chapter 3, verses 1 through 3. See what sort of love the Father has given to us, that we should be called God's children, and indeed we are. For this reason the world does not know us, because it did not know him. Dear friends, we are God's children now, and what we will be has not been revealed. We know that whenever it is revealed, we will be like him, because we will see him just as he is. And everyone who has this hope focused on him purifies himself, just as Jesus is pure. This is the word of the Lord. I'm going to start the sermon and open it up with a sea shanty. I'm a fan of sea shanties, and I'm going to open up with one. Farewell, now my love, send me off with a kiss. Heave away, straight ahead, Santiano. The tears are as salty and deep as the sea, but my sailor's heart is keen to go. As far the wind and our sails may blow, heave away, straight ahead, Santiano. Bright the day, and the heavens know, we'll be kings wherever we may go. Hoist a bit of sail, bring us to full speed. Keep away, straight ahead, Santiano. Who knows what our fate may be, but the whole world is ours to see. I love sea shanties because they serve. Sea shanties, if you were to describe them, what is the purpose? It is to remember the extraordinary while doing the mundane. Shanties are rhythmic. Work is rhythmic. Work is mundane. It's boring. It is for a greater purpose. It is for something larger than we can understand, or that maybe even be revealed to us, but is nonetheless a rhythm and something we must do. And what do sea shanties do in the mundane, day in and day out? Raising sails, lowering sails, billaging the pumps, eating stale bread, eating oranges so you don't get scurvy. It is for a greater purpose. It is for something unseen at the end that is promised to them. It is a reminder of the extraordinary while doing the mundane. And dare I say that John, in this portion of this epistle in chapter 3, is literally giving us his version of the first century sea shanty. It is a reminder. It is to say, Christian, heave ho, work on. It might be mundane. It's the things that are in and out, day in and day out, that you might take for granted. But these little things that you do, these little things that I've taught you, these little things that are going to prepare you for those that come in the church that try to deceive you, these are the everyday things that bring you to the end. To the end. And this is why John is bringing up Christ being revealed to us. Last week we talked about John telling us that we should not shirk back when Christ returns, and that there are things that we are to do so that we don't shrink back. And we talked a little bit about what that looks like. But now John is going to, in this little encouragement reminder, gush a little bit about God's love for us, something that is really indescribable. John opens up, see what sort of love the Father has given us. He has just said in the end of chapter 2 that anyone who practices righteousness has been born of him. Has been born of him. Sometimes we take that understanding as just like a title. We're just children of God. That's the title we receive. If we move into God's house, we live in his house, but that's really all we do. He gives us space to be in his presence. But it's more than that, right? It is that we are in God's house now. We do have the title of children. But remember last week that what a child resembles, right? A child resembles their father and their mother. But in this example, it's going to be the father will be the example of both of those things. Child resembles their father. So John is saying not only do you receive a title of child, but you actually are given the nature of the Father, of your Father. We call those communicable attributes. And they are given to us through our relationship with the Son. Christ is the Son of God. We are sons with him, connected with him. There is something different about us now. We're not born this way. None of us are. John is very clear with Nicodemus. There must be a second birth. Nicodemus says, how does someone go back into their mother's womb? And here John is saying, and Christ says to Nicodemus, you must be born from above. The wind comes and the Spirit blows where it wills, just like in the sea shanty, blowing ships around. We raise sails and the Spirit takes us. We're born again. We were getting a new nature now. So not only do we receive a title of children, a child, son, and daughter, you are given new attributes now. Do you understand? Does that compute with you? It barely computes with John. He's like, look at this. Okay, the word that John uses to try to express this is, in English, it says, see what sort of love. See what sort of love? The whole point is that you can't see it. It is like a stranger from another country. A country you've never seen, a country you've never heard of. Maybe you've heard little rumors about this country, this nation. This love comes from somewhere so alien, it's hard to describe. And that love from this country, this nation, that is not of this world. That is not of this world. There's no other nation that offers the love that the Father's offering God's people now, right? Let's go to any nation on the globe today. Even the most Christian nation that's ever existed doesn't give this kind of love. It's so alien. But it's yours and it's mine through Jesus Christ. What sort of love from this country that we've never seen, we don't understand, that the Father has given to us. And the Son of God, Jesus Christ, has come from that country, has come from that kingdom, has come from that nation, that heavenly nation. And he had glory with the Father and came down and gave that glory up in the form of a servant so that we can be with him in that kingdom. And all these people that have come into the church and are trying to deceive you, they have nothing on what the Father has given you. For all their deception, for all their ways they try to get in your ear and say, we're really with God, not you. John's not really with God, we are. For all their attempts to do that, John's going to say, it's not just my words that will keep you safe, right? It's the fact that these words are backed by this king of a nation you've never seen that is more powerful than anything you can see. That's the kind of love the Father has given us. Can we understand that? Yes and no. We understand it in that we have faith that is true. I give my life to that. I know in principle that's true, that the Father has as much love for me as he does with Christ because I'm with Christ. Not anything of me. I've been born again. You've been born again. Last week I brought up things that we ought to do to reveal Christ. You remember one of the things that John is concerned about with not shrinking away from Christ when he does return is that as Christians, we reveal Christ to the world, right? The world sees Christ in us, and other believers see Christ in us. And the question would be, well, how do we do that? How do we build things that show Christ? And we see the tension between those that say we build kingdoms. We build physical kingdoms to show Christ. And we see the other tension saying, no, we build people. And the people reveal Christ. And it doesn't matter what kingdom they're in. It could be a great one or a tyrannical one. It could be one that says, yeah, we don't really care. Christians are fine. We let them just do their thing. Or it could be kingdoms that say Christians should die by all means possible. Christ is going to be revealed in both of those scenarios. That's the tension we kind of came into. And I want to say that John is very nationalistic. John does believe in a Christian nation. He does. But it's not a physical one right now. It's one that's been deposited to us spiritually. Why? Because the love that we have been given, has been born again, is of this country that is inside us now. It is given to us now in our spirit, that we've been regenerated, we've been reborn, we've been given a new nature. And it is that, as he says in verse 1 of chapter 3, see what sort of love the Father has given to us that we should be called God's children. And then he just reemphasizes it. And indeed we are. And indeed we are. And he says, what's the reason for the love that, or what is the reason for why the other nations of the world don't accept us? Well, it says, for this reason, the world does not know us. So John actually says, look, there's this kingdom that has been given to you that is not physical, which is why the physical world doesn't know you. The physical world is still under the curse. The physical world, which is still ruled by the deceiver, the murderer, the one from the beginning who is a liar, that world doesn't know you because you're not of it. And I want to say, if that's true, then there's nothing physical that we can bring down right now that is going to be accepting of us even. There's no physical kingdom that we can set up that's going to have this, that's going to know us. There's always going to be deceivers that come in. It's going to be Egypt over and over again. We might have a Joseph that rules and saves his people, but guess what? There's going to be a Pharaoh that forgets him. There's going to be a Pharaoh that forgets him. And the people of God will be persecuted again. Because our kingdom is not of this world yet. And John doesn't say, look, because that's true. He doesn't go on and say, for this reason the world does not know you, so we better set up the kingdom now so we can actually live in peace now. That's not what he says. He says, this is just the truth until Christ returns. This is the way that we don't shrink back. Again, realizing what the world is, what it's after, and what you've been given. John wants to emphasize in verse 1 here that God's love is not only shown in Jesus Christ, because we see it when we read the synoptics, when we read the Gospels. We see God's love, we see Christ's love and what he does. Last week I read like all the things that Christ had done up to the point where Philip asked the question, can we see the Father? There's Christ's love shown. But Christ does something more than that. He bestows it. This is John's language when he says you've received the anointing, right? So we have the same spirit now to love as Christ has loved. And this is something that happens inside of us. And that bestowing, that anointing is what not simply giving us a title of child, but it is something that connects us to Christ himself. It is what gives us new attributes. And it is what makes us alien to the world. Why does the world mock Christians? One of the mockeries that Peter brings up is that the world says, look, you say your God is going to, he's going to come and he's going to judge. But look, yesterday happened, today happened, tomorrow happens, and your God hasn't shown up yet. In fact, Christian, you say you have all this power, but you die just like I do. When there's an earthquake, Christian, your house collapses just as mine did. What do you have? What do you have? And you know what our fleshly response is? We go, oh, yeah, what do we have? We got to show this. We got to show what we have, but we got to do it in a physical way. We got to do it. We got to start building things to show the world that we're different. So now we got to Christians got to be known for, I'm going to say this just because it's in our face in the church. But they're going to know us because we're like cigar lovers, or they're going to know us because we have like the best whiskey options in the entire. You can come over to my house and I'll treat you to some really great whiskey. Or this church loves fish tanks. Or this is how. Only two of us, but that's how we're going to differentiate from the world. And the world's like, I could build a fish tank. I got a great whiskey selection too, and I love cigars. Why does the world mock us? It mocks us because it actually can't see the glory that is hidden. The glory that is hidden with Christ. In the same way that the world didn't recognize Christ as his glory was veiled in his flesh. In the Transfiguration, John was able to see this. John got a glimpse of the glory of Christ in the Transfiguration. And he still quite didn't understand it until post-cross and post-Pentecost, and he understands the veiling of the glory that Christ has is the same veiling that we have, that our glory is with him now, as Christ is at the right hand of the Father. It's hidden there. The world can't see it. The world just sees that we're the same just as them, but we have this fake hope. And Christians, we buy into that lie. And then guess what? When we buy into that lie, we start building physical things, and then each one of us starts dying. Because we stop taking care of each other. We start washing our hands. We read in the liturgy today, the Pharisees, you didn't wash your hands. You're unclean. That's the things you got to see. The Gentiles got to see us do this. You got to see that we're clean. God's got to see that we're clean by physically showing it to everybody else. No. Purification starts on the what? Inside. How many verses? James and Mark. It was all about what is true purity? What is true purification? Is it the outside or the inside? What part of the kingdom have we been given? The inside purification of the kingdom. Now, we are a kingdom. We are a nation. And we are visible. But we're not trying to show the world our alienness by what we build. We're trying to show the world and our alienness by our love. That's the whole point. And that's John's amazing sea shanty here is, look, you might be tempted to say, loving each other is not enough. We got to go and do things. We got to take over things to really bring God's love and to really show the world that Christ really rose from the dead. Because this loving one another isn't enough. The world just mocks us. They just say, you've been promising Christ for 2,000 years, and here we are still. And I'm going to keep sinning because what do you have to offer me? And I'll say, well, look at our colleges. Look at our Christian colleges. We're really good philosophers. We think really well. We really hold to the Western values. I love Aristotle. I love the pre-Socratics and post-Socratics. That's what, those who are really saved will hold on to those things because those are natural revelation. Those are what are naturally good. Well, I don't. That's not how we point the world to Christ. I don't want to say that those things are inherently bad either. Christians are going to start schools. Those things are going to happen. And there's going to be appropriate times to do that. And it's never to say we shouldn't build things or anything like that. The problem is that the focus becomes on revealing Christ to the world in the things that we're building, thinking that the kingdom is now. And in John's sea shanty, the whole point he writes this is to say, it's going to be hard for the world to see what you actually have hidden in Christ. Because you're going to look the same on the surface, in the sense that you're both going to die. When a famine hits, you're both going to go hungry. When the rains don't come, you're both going to be, your mouths will both be parched. But what's the difference? The difference is that I still die for my other Christian. I don't steal food from him. Even when I'm starving to death. Even when my mouth is unquenched. because my focus is on what's coming. When you sing the sea shanties that are on the ship and they're going to this land, and some of the crew die on their way over there, they're not sad about it. It's not like, oh, well, we're not going to see the ultimate where we're going to end. No, because we know that we're going to be resurrected. We'll see the end even when we die on the way there. It doesn't just stop. The world, though, the world's going to hold, it's going to clutch to survival. And it doesn't matter what our towers look like. It doesn't matter what our cities look like. The Christian is going to sacrifice himself for another Christian. That is that not the example of love that we have? Is that not what Christ literally did? He literally died for you. And what has been deposited, what the kingdom is now, is no slouch. It's no slouch. It might be mundane, but it is powerful. The father raising their kids in their nurture and admonition of the Lord is powerful. The family worship that nobody sees is powerful. The lessons you teach your kids about sin and forgiveness. When you, fathers, even when you sin against your wife, showing like your kids seeing you and your wife forgive each other, vice versa. Wives being submissive to their husbands. This is the power of God. And this is what the world, eventually the world will see. Now, when Christ returns, I'm skipping ahead. All right, go back. This is what the world will see. And that has way more power than what our flesh thinks shows power, which is crusader armor. Right? Going to Jerusalem and kicking the Muslims out or whatever. I bring up the crusading thing because it's been a hot topic lately. But this love that John is just so focused on and reminding us as Christians to think about and to work in is a spiritual kind of love. A spiritual kingdom that's been deposited to us that's waiting for something else. And what's that waiting? Well, we're going to get to it here. Verse 2. Before that, I'll continue through the sea shanty. I'm fine without a roof and a house of stone. Heave away, straight ahead, Santiana. Home for me is the sea we roam, and the roof of stars is mine alone. As far as the wind in our sails may blow, heave away, straight ahead, Santiana. Bright the day, and the heavens know, we'll be kings wherever we may go. Verse 4, dear friends, we are God's children now. Dear friends, some of your translations might say beloved. There's two things John wants to reveal here in this part of his Christian sea shanty. One is he's using the same term that the Father uses for Christ, the belovedness. When in the Transfiguration, this is my beloved Son. Listen to him. This is my beloved. Every time the Father talks about Christ, it's this word, my beloved, my beloved, my beloved. John is using this word on purpose. You are beloved as Christ is beloved because you're in him. Fully. It's a word of fullness, of full love, a special love. Reserved for, well, it's reserved for Christ and all that are in him. Secondly, some translate this word, dear friends, on purpose, because I think John is also saying, look, I don't want to hold anything back from you. I don't want to hold anything back. What he's trying to say is he's going back to his gospel in chapter 15 when Christ says this to his apostles. He says, no longer do I call you slaves because the slave does not understand what the master is doing, but I have called you friends because I have revealed to you everything I've heard from my Father. John is saying, look, in this reminder, I'm not holding anything back from you. I've been with the Son in his life. I learned from him. I saw his transfiguration. I learned from him for 40 days, whatever period of time Christ taught the disciples after the resurrection. He saw him ascend. right? And now he's doing what he's doing as an apostle. I'm not holding anything back. Christ is revealing all things to me. I'm revealing all things to you. And remember, the Gnostic does the opposite of that. The Gnostic hides the knowledge. It says you got to work for the secret knowledge. John's like, I have nothing to hide, as Christ hid nothing from me in the end. He hides nothing from us. He wants us to know all that we need to know. So first, you're beloved as Christ is with the Father. And John is saying, what I'm about to tell you is everything I know. I'm not holding anything back. Again, he reiterates, we are God's children now, and what we will be has not been revealed. This is a striking statement. This is the apostle that writes Revelation. This is the one that probably maybe had the clearest understanding of what glorification might look like. And here he says, look, I'm being completely forthcoming with you. I'm going to tell you all things. I'm not holding anything back. And what we will be has not yet been revealed. What you're working towards, what I'm giving you as a song to work, as a rhythm of day in, day out, what we'll actually receive at the end, I can't even really tell you fully. It is something that is described, as Paul says, a mirror dimly, right? We'll see clearly when Christ returns. Paul talks about us putting off mortality and putting on immortality. We understand that the dead will rise. The dead will rise, and Christ will come, and those with Christ will come with him, like a conquering king enters into a kingdom. Revelation talks about jewels and gold and the city of Jerusalem. You see all this typology and word pictures of what this inheritance could look like. But at the end of the day, John's saying it has not yet been revealed fully. There's hints and pictures. And in my mind, if that's true, if the apostle that writes Revelation is saying, even I, an apostle who heard everything that Christ said, and Christ himself didn't hold anything back from me, I'm telling you, I don't know what it actually looks like. It's more glorious than I can tell you. And he doesn't say, therefore, work to bring the kingdom now so we can see it. Doesn't say that. He says it in a way that as we toil in this life now, as we work on the ship, as we lay down the railroad, like you think of the Transcontinental Railroad, we're laying down one rail at a time, chink, 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 and we're singing, right? And it could be despairing when we look forward because all we see are the Sierras and like, how do we get over those mountains? And we look back, we can't see far enough back to say, look how far we've come. John's saying, look, what's over those Sierra mountains, I can't even totally reveal to you, but what you need to do is keep laying the rails and keep going, keep loving one another. When they come to kill you, count it all joy. When they come to take your stuff, count it all joy. This is how a Christian's made. And how do we know that's how a Christian's made? Because the next part of the sentence, we know that whatever is revealed, or whenever it is revealed, there's imminency here. There's no like, well, first the nation's got to submit to Christ. Well, first there's got to be 1,000 years. There's an imminency here. We know that whenever it is revealed, I haven't been given a time. Even the Son said it's for the Father to know only. We know that whenever it is revealed, though, we will be like him because we will see him just as he is. This is the conforming image language. When we say constantly, Lord, conform us into the image of Christ, this is where it comes from. This is the conforming language. This is what the toil does to us. This is what the inner purification does to us. This is how the inner man, when it changes over time through the grace of God and the fellowship of believers and the teaching of the word and the trials and the tribulations and the world saying, you're a bunch of liars, you have nothing, it's all a game, it's all a lie. This is how you're built into his image. And when Christ is revealed, you'll see him just as he is, because you've already reflected him. And all will be revealed to you, to us, to the church, to the beloved, to the one that Song of Solomon talks about. There will be a time when the kingdom physically will be revealed. But right now, you're on the ship, Christian. You're heaving ho, you're raising sails, you're lowering them, you're taking care of when the crew gets sick, right? When we get depressed, when there's overcast for days, when the wind stops blowing. This is Paul's admonition to Timothy. Preach the word in season and out of season. Sometimes the wind won't blow as hard. And it's like, are we getting anywhere? There'll be a point where we reach the Sierras. How do we get around them? Well, we got to blow through. We got to blow up through them. That's going to take a while. And so it look like we're not going anywhere. And people are going to die on the way. People are going to die. And what does Paul say about that? Yeah, people will die. But you don't mourn as the world mourns. Because they didn't lose the celestial city. They didn't lose the end game. They've gained it. They've lost their lives, and they will gain it in Christ because Christ lost his life and gained it. And so we go joyfully, even in the midst of people dying, getting sick. When there isn't a Christian nation, when there isn't an easy life, when there isn't a constitution over us that protects our unalienable rights. I hope we're prepared for those that go away. And not only that, I hope we're prepared to be joyful if those go away. And know that we're not losing anything. John says you're gaining. You're being fashioned for this revealing of Christ when he comes again. I just love the candor that John has. Like, look, I'm the beloved disciple, and I don't know what the inheritance fully looks like. But you keep on working. And then, but what he does know, he tells us. He tells us that whenever it is revealed, we will be like him. And remember, John even saw him post-resurrection. He saw him like zip around, Christ like zip around, like room, not in a room, eating fish, but somehow having like spiritual qualities. I don't know, how does this work? I don't know. And John's saying like, you're going to be like that, and whatever that looks like, because remember, we get what Christ will get. We get what Christ gets. Our bodies will be like his. We won't have sin. There will be no more tears. Creation won't be against us. But those are principles. We can't describe that more, but that is true. That will happen. That's what John does know. And then finally, he ends in verse 3 with how do we continue, Christian, in this toil, in this day in, day out Christianity, this kingdom that has been given in part that we're waiting for in full. He says this. And everyone who has this hope focused on him, God, Christ, his work, what does he do? Does he purify? Does he go and build Christian nations? Does he go subject nature because we've been restored? Now we can do what Adam couldn't do in the garden, and we slowly reverse the curse of nature until it gets some kind of perfection, and then Christ is going to come back? No. He says, everyone who has this hope, focused on him, purifies himself, just as Jesus is pure. And he's given us the ability to do that in the Holy Spirit. That is a power that is true power. If you don't understand this is Darth Vader. You don't know the power of the dark side. As Christians, we don't know the power of sin. and the fact that the Spirit now has released us from its power, and we can subdue the flesh, and we can subdue the inner man that wants to lash out at our brother, that wants the brother that sinned against us to get his due, that breaks fellowship. We can temper that man. We can bind that man. The Pharisees wanted to bind their flesh outwardly. We read that in Mark today. It's not what enters the body that defiles a man. It's what comes out of the man that defiles him. John is saying, purify yourself inwardly. Christ has died for you. You are renewed. You are justified. Now purify yourself. And it is not ritually. It is not do all these things now ritually. That doesn't purify anybody. Didn't purify the Pharisees. It didn't purify Paul. Paul says, Christians today, there's almost this idea that you need to be a Renaissance man after you're saved. You now need to come under every occupation and be an expert in everything because you've been redeemed and you have this ability now. You know what Paul says about Renaissance men? He says, I was a Pharisee of Pharisees, circumcised on the 8th day, has the law memorized. He said, that's all worthless. Worthless. Christian, you're not called to be a Renaissance man. John's not saying, hey, if you're focused on him, be good at everything. Purify yourself on the outside. No, it's identifying where our sin is, where our temptations are, and every single one of us is different. We all had different lives. We have different backgrounds. We have different temptations. There's general ones that we're all going to struggle with, lust and anger, but those manifest differently. They're different triggers for you than it is for me. And as a body, we encourage one another. As a body, those things are pulled out, right? As we interact with one another. Where do you think these sins come out? It is in our fellowship. Sometimes we get angry at one another. Sometimes one of us is going to push that button. And the old man's going to kind of rear its head. Right? But you put him back down. And you come in confession. Right? I keep bringing up what John says early on in this epistle, because remember, it's all connected. This verse isn't in a vacuum. And that's how we purify ourselves. John isn't saying you go privately and purify. Try to go purify yourself without being revealed what you need to purify. That's really hard. We're really bad judges of ourselves, are we not? Most of us will say, I'm fine, when you're drowning. Either because you're too prideful to say you can't swim, or you really think that not breathing underwater is normal, even though you require oxygen. But that's how sin is revealed in a fellowship body, and that's how we're purified. And we have that power. The world doesn't have that power. And that's when the world will really say, there's something different now. Because when I screw up at work, the pariah right next to me that's looking for my position is going to eat me. Dog eat dog world. And the Christian world, it is, well, dogs love each other. We don't eat each other's food. Like, we're not like, I have a basset hound that has a eating problem. There's no limits. All food is his, all of it. Even an infant, he'll bite my infant's hand off for the food. Not really. He's safe. But my point is, as Christians, that's how the world works. And when the world sees hey, you're actually giving food to one another. I actually fast. I actually go hungry so that you can eat. What? I don't buy something this month because I want it to be put aside for a Christian that needs something. What? I actually maybe don't have as much of an inheritance because I want to actually do this for somebody. That doesn't make any sense. Don't you want to like secure your future? Don't you want to secure your kids' future? Right? That's how the world's going to say, oh, you guys are different. There's something different about you now. Like I thought it was these cathedrals. I thought it was Notre Dame. That's a really beautiful building, and only Christians can build that. I know a lot of pagans that make way better work and can do the same thing. In fact, the pagans like control Notre Dame now anyway. They try to burn it down every once in a while. And they're like, wait, no, that's a national, it just turns into like they're just, Paris is just known for having that cathedral there. So John reminds us, focus on purity because you're waiting for Christ to come and you're waiting for the physical manifestation of the kingdom. This is so when you're struggling, Christian, when you're struggling with assurance, when you're struggling with sin, when you're struggling with somebody sinning against you, when you're like, am I going to make ends meet this month? I've been really bad with my money, and now as I'm being sanctified, I'm realizing I have to change my finances, but it looks like there's so much to do. There's so much to do. There is a lot to do. Remember the sea shanty. Remember the day in slow work of sanctification. The slow work that Christ has given us the power to do. And let's, on this ship together, as we sing this song together, what John has given us, let us remember what we're going towards. And we may die on the way. We may lose children on the way. Churches may split. Enemies may encroach upon us. But the ship goes forward because they can't stop the wind. They can't stop the wind. The Spirit goes where he wills. With our sail up, the Spirit's going to take us. I'm fine without a roof and a house of stone. Heave away, straight ahead, Santiano. Home for me is the sea we roam, and the roof of stars is mine alone. As far as the wind and our sails may blow, heave away, straight ahead, Santiano. Bright the day, and the heavens know we'll be kings wherever we may go. Let's pray. Father, it can be hard for us to see the extraordinary amongst the mundane. And a lot of the times we think what you have given us is not quite enough. We can't quite reveal Christ in the way that you've decreed. It's not enough that we love one another. We have to do other things. We have to add and add and add and add and add. Father, let's be content with what you've given us, even the fruits of the Spirit that you've given us. Let's be content with those. And then not hold back any of those attributes of love and patience, kindness, endurance, long-suffering for one another. Father, it always comes back that we desire to be a church that loves one another and reveals Christ in that love, as Christ was revealed to us in that love. Remind us that there is no difference, so we're not going to do it in a different way that Christ has done it. That we're not going to be greater than our Master, and our Master suffered, and so will we. Give us the strength to persevere. Well, you know you will.